All right, welcome to Study Hall, where we take these deep dives into all kinds of topics. And, well, hopefully you'll come away with some aha moments from it.
Uh-huh. Moments, I like that.
So today we're diving into the art world, which I always find so interesting. And
Interesting. Yeah, sometimes it's baffling.
it really is.
Sometimes it's brilliant.
It is, but it's always a really good source of conversation.
It is.
And that's what we're here for right now.
Absolutely.
So today's subject.
Let's dive in.
Let's dive in.
Let's get into it.
All right, so we're going to be talking about Andy Warhol's Campbell's soup cans.
Oh, yeah, you know those things.
You know those things, exactly.
You've seen them everywhere.
You see them everywhere, but did you ever really think about why those soup cans became one of the most iconic artworks of the 20th century?
Yeah, that's what we're here to unravel.
Exactly.
That's why we're here today.
So for those of you who might not be art history buffs,
This is for you.
this is for you. Think of this as a friendly chat,
Yes.
not a stuffy lecture
Ex-
about how a simple can of soup became this pop art phenomenon.
Exactly. And even if you think you know Warhol
Yeah.
and you think you know the soup cans,
Yeah,
stick around. We might uncover a few details that'll make you see them in a whole new light.
exactly. So let's start with the man behind the soup, Andy Warhol, the king of pop art himself.
The man, the myth, the legend.
The legend,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes.
And he had this really interesting journey from being a commercial illustrator to, well, Andy Warhol.
Yeah. How did that happen,
How
right?
did that happen?
It's more connected than you might think because before he was the Andy Warhol,
Yeah.
he was a successful commercial illustrator
Wow.
and he was working for places like RCA Records,
Oh, wow.
Glamour magazine,
Hey.
developing his signature style using this really interesting blotted line technique.
Oh, interesting.
So he was already immersed in this world of mass-produced images, and he was already sort of playing with ideas of consumerism even back then.
So he was kind of like a pop art foreshadowing, even in those early days.
Exactly. His commercial art background definitely informed his artistic vision.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's almost like he was absorbing these ideas about everyday objects, mass production, and then, bam, he turns them into fine art.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So then fast forward to 1962.
To the 60s,
Warhol unveils Campbell soup cans at his first solo gallery show.
his big debut.
Can you imagine walking into that gallery expecting, some landscapes or some portraits, and then boom,
Rows and rows of soup.
32 canvases, each a different Campbell's soup flavor, just lined up like they're on a supermarket shelf.
Talk about making an entrance.
Yeah, that's a statement.
Right, and remember, this was at a time when abstract expressionism was kind of the reigning style.
Right.
So think Jackson Pollock, think those bold emotional strokes. And pop art, which focused on these everyday objects and mass culture, was really a rebellion against all of that highbrow art.
So he was kind of like the art world's punk rocker,
He was definitely shaking things up.
crashing the party with his soup cans.
Yeah, and it wasn't just about soup. Okay.
Pop art was about embracing everything from advertisements and comics to celebrities.
Wow.
It was about finding art in the mundane and the things that we see every day, but maybe we don't always stop to really consider.
Right, it's like taking the ordinary and making it extraordinary in a way.
Exactly.
Okay, so that leads us to this big question. Why soup? I mean, why not? Like a can of beans or a box of cereal. Was Warhol just really into Campbell's?
Well, there's a lot of speculation around that choice.
Yeah.
Some people say that he genuinely ate Campbell's soup every single day for years.
Oh, that's dedication.
Talk about brand loyalty, right?
Quite amazing.
But I think there has to be something more to it than just a dietary preference, don't you?
Yeah, I think so too.
You're on the right track.
Okay.
For Warhol, Campbell's soup, it represented something much bigger, I think.
Okay.
Because it was everywhere, it was affordable.
Right.
Everyone recognized those cans, and they kind of embodied this idea of uniformity and accessibility.
Interesting.
And those themes run really deep in his art. So it wasn't really about the soup itself.
Really
It was
not.
more about using it as a symbol
Exactly.
and making a statement about mass production,
Yes.
the consumer culture, right?
That's it.
Okay.
And think about how he displayed those paintings.
Right.
All lined up, repetitive, just like you would see them in a grocery store.
Yeah.
That deliberate kind of lack of individuality, it really mirrored the mass production methods of the time.
Oh, wow.
And it was such a stark contrast to the traditional art world, which valued originality and one-of-a-kind pieces.
So he's really going against the grain with this.
It really was.
Okay, so let's not forget about the actual technique that was involved in creating these soup cans, too.
Yeah, the process.
The process, because, I mean, they weren't screen printed, right? Not at first.
No, not at first.
Uh,
Those early soup cans were actually meticulously hand-painted.
Oh, wow, really?
I know, he was going for that machine-made aesthetic, but it was all done by hand.
That's dedication.
It's ironic, isn't it?
It really is.
But later on, he did start using silkscreen printing.
He did.
Yeah, and that allowed him to take the whole mass production idea to a new level.
Right.
Because suddenly he could produce multiple versions of the same image,
Right.
just like a factory churning out identical products.
It's like art imitating life, imitating art.
Exactly, perfectly aligned with his artistic vision.
Yeah, and this whole repetition thing, this wasn't just a one-time deal for Warhol, was it? He kind of applied it to other iconic images too, right?
Absolutely, like Marilyn Monroe,
Oh, yeah.
Coca-Cola bottles, dollar bills. He was taking all these icons of pop culture and reproducing them over and over and over again.
Wow.
And it was this exploration of celebrity, consumerism, the power of images.
Right.
And he even took it beyond painting.
Yeah.
He ventured into filmmaking, and he created this legendary studio called The Factory.
Art factory, yeah.
Which became this amazing hub for artists, musicians, all sorts of creative minds.
So, back to the soup cans. Was everyone immediately on board with this whole concept? I can't imagine the art world was just universally thrilled.
Oh, let's just say the art world was divided.
Yeah.
Some people saw it as brilliant,
Okay.
groundbreaking commentary on modern life.
Interesting.
But others, they thought it was a joke.
yeah.
You know, a publicity stunt, an insult to real art.
It's always so funny to me, the classic reactions like, my kid could paint that.
Exactly right. People questioned his talent. They questioned his originality
Yeah.
because they were so accustomed to that emotional depth of abstract expressionism.
Yeah.
And then Warhol comes along with his mass-produced imagery, this cool detachment,
Yeah.
and his soup cans.
Soup cans.
It was total disruption.
Okay, so we've got a rebellious artist, a controversial artwork, and a very bewildered art world.
Yeah, where do we go from here?
That's the big question.
What happens next in this story? It's kind of like if you walked into a gallery in 1962 expecting to see, beautiful landscapes or portraits, something you imagine in a fancy museum, and instead you're just confronted with rows and rows of soup cans.
Yeah, I can only imagine what people's reactions would have been.
Oh, it was total shock to the system.
Yeah.
Some people were intrigued. They saw it as a really fresh and new way of looking at art. But plenty of other people just dismissed it outright, thought it was a joke,
Right.
a cheap publicity stunt, maybe even an insult to what they considered real art.
It's funny how those initial reactions can be so strong, but how did those reactions change over time? When did Campbell's soup can start to be recognized as the masterpiece that it is today?
I think it's important to remember that Campbell's soup cans wasn't created in a vacuum.
Right.
It emerged alongside this whole rise of pop art as a movement.
Yeah.
And that movement was really turning the traditional art world on its head.
It really was.
So as pop art started to gain more traction, started to resonate with more people, Warhol's work kind of naturally rose along with it.
It's like the art world needed to catch its breath. Almost reevaluate what art could be before it could truly appreciate what Warhol was doing.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thought.
Yeah.
Maybe people needed time to adjust to this really radical shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And as they became more familiar with pop art's ideas, they started to see the brilliance in Warhol's concept.
Okay.
How he was holding up this mirror to society
Yeah.
and making us confront these realities of consumerism, mass media, the overwhelming power of brands in our daily lives.
And in a way, isn't that a testament to Warhol's vision? Like he was so ahead of his time, he was tapping into something that would become even more relevant in the decades to come.
Oh, without a doubt. He was a visionary.
Yeah.
He was anticipating how art, advertising, and pop culture would all continue to intertwine. It's really fascinating to consider how his work might be interpreted in our current digital age, Do you think social media has amplified the themes that he was exploring?
I mean, it's almost like he predicted our Instagram-obsessed world in a way,
Yeah.
where everyone's curating their online image and brands are just constantly vying for our attention.
It's a strange thought, but maybe Warhol would have thrived in today's world.
I think he would have.
He was so in tune with this power of image and the idea of mass-produced fame.
He would have been all over social media.
Oh, I know. Imagine him with an Instagram account. Wouldn't that be something?
Okay, back to the art itself. Campbell's soup cans isn't just tucked away in some private collection, right?
Yeah.
Where can people actually see this iconic work today?
Oh, it's definitely not hidden away.
Okay.
It's made quite a journey from the grocery aisle to the museum wall.
That it has.
You can actually find it at the Museum of Modern Art,
Uh-huh.
MoMA, one of the most prestigious art institutions in the world.
From soup aisle to museum walls, what a trajectory.
It really is, and I think it's a testament to how Warhol's work has been embraced by the art world and how it's become a part of our collective cultural consciousness.
Yeah, so beyond just the art world, how do you think Campbell's soup cans has influenced the way we see the world around us? I mean, it's more than just a painting hanging in a museum, isn't it?
It goes much deeper than that, I think.
Yeah.
Warhol's work made us much more aware of the power of branding and imagery,
Okay.
and it forces us to kind of think critically about consumer culture,
Yeah.
about our relationship with these products and the messages that they're sending.
Right.
It's almost like he's encouraging us to find art in the everyday, you know?
Right.
To look beyond the surface and see the meaning behind these objects that surround us.
Like he did with the soup cans. He did it with celebrities.
Yeah.
He did with Coca-Cola bottles, even dollar bills.
Exactly.
He took these icons of American culture and just transformed them into art.
That's right. And by doing that, he was blurring these lines between high art and popular culture
Right.
and making art more accessible and relatable to a wider audience.
Yeah.
Remember that quote he's so famous for about Coca-Cola, you know, how even the president drinks the same Coke as everyone else?
Yeah.
That idea is so central to his work, I think.
Yeah, it's like he was saying that in a way we're all connected by these everyday objects and experiences. Like he was challenging this idea of art being elitist or exclusive.
Yeah.
It's for everyone, even people who maybe don't have an art history degree or a super deep understanding of the techniques.
He was democratizing art, he was bringing it down to earth,
Yeah.
and he was making it relevant to everyday people, which was kind of a radical idea at the time.
He really was.
And it's something that we're still grappling with today.
Yeah, so we've talked about the controversy, we've talked about the evolution of how people saw it,
Yeah.
we've talked about the legacy.
It's the impact.
But at the end of the day, what's the real meaning behind Campbell soup cans? Is there one definitive answer?
That's the beauty of it, I think.
Right.
There isn't one single answer, one definitive meaning. Okay. Warhol was intentionally ambiguous, leaving his work open to interpretation.
So is it a critique of consumerism? Is it a celebration of American pop culture? Or maybe both at the same time?
It could be any of those things, or it could be something completely different.
Yeah.
It all depends on your own perspective, your own personal experiences, your relationship with the imagery he's using.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes it so endlessly fascinating
Yeah.
and endlessly debatable.
It's like one of those optical illusions where you see something different depending on how you look at it.
Exactly. It's a dynamic artwork that really invites viewers to engage with it on their own terms.
Okay. So we've established there's no easy answers here.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we've had some aha moments during this deep dive.
Yeah.
It's like we've seen those soup cans a million times, but now we're seeing them in a whole new light.
That's the power of art.
It really is.
It makes us question our assumptions
Yeah.
and see the world with fresh eyes and even challenge our own beliefs.
And sometimes it even leads us down a rabbit hole of fascinating questions about art and culture and the world around us.
Oh, absolutely. Speaking of which, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay.
You know, Warhol was exploring this tension between mass production and individual identity.
Right.
So on the one hand, you have these rows of identical soup cans
Right.
representing that uniformity of mass production.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, Warhol himself was this unique and eccentric personality.
It's like he was both a product of and a rebel against that mass-produced world.
Exactly.
He embraced the visual language of mass production, but he also used those same elements to create something unique, something that kind of went beyond the ordinary.
Yeah, he was constantly playing with that tension between conformity and individuality.
Right.
And in a world that's becoming increasingly homogenized, you know,
Right.
he's asking, how do we retain our own unique sense of self? And it's a question that feels more relevant than ever.
It really does.
Yeah.
And he was also known for saying, I want to be a machine.
Yeah.
What do you think he meant by that?
It was a very provocative statement, for sure.
It was.
I think he was fascinated by the idea of removing that personal touch,
Okay.
of embracing that mechanical precision of mass production. But of course, there's always this layer of irony with Warhol.
Right. It's like he couldn't escape his own humanity even as he was exploring those depersonalizing aspects of modern life.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes his work so captivating,
Yeah.
so thought-provoking.
Yeah.
You know, it's full of contradictions gradations, these layers of meaning that are constantly shifting and evolving.
Circling back to Campbell's soup cans, it's almost like looking at those simple cans through a kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
What appears to be this straightforward image reveals all these layers of meaning when you really consider the context, the technique, Warhol's intentions.
Yeah, it's not just about soup. It's about consumerism, American culture, artistic identity,
Right.
the very definition of art itself. It's a multifaceted exploration of modern life, and it's that refusal to be easily categorized. I think that's what makes Warhol's work so enduring.
Okay, so what does this all mean for us? For those of us who aren't art critics or gallery owners who maybe haven't spent hours contemplating Warhol soup cans?
I think the key takeaway is this. Art is everywhere.
Okay.
It's not just confined to museums or galleries.
Right.
It's in the products we buy, the brands we wear, the images we consume every day.
Yeah.
It's all around us, just waiting to be noticed and questioned.
It's like Warhol's legacy is about challenging the status quo, about pushing boundaries,
Yeah.
and just making us rethink the world we live in.
It's about seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary, finding beauty in these unexpected places, and understanding that art can really come from anywhere, even a can of soup.
So next time you're at the grocery store,
Yeah.
take a moment to really look at those shelves, those colorful packages, those perfectly arranged products.
Yeah.
You might just find a little bit of Warhol winking back at you.
And who knows, maybe it will inspire you to create something of your own.
That's a great point.
Right.
But before we all rush out to buy a case of Campbell's soup and declare ourselves artists,
Okay.
let's take a moment to gather our thoughts.
Right.
And when we come back, we'll wrap things up and leave you with a final, thought-provoking question to ponder. And we're back, diving right back into our exploration of Andy Warhol's Campbell's soup cans.
It's amazing how much there is to unpack, right?
Yeah.
You see it, and at first glance, it
Yeah.
seems like a simple image.
Yeah. It seems pretty straightforward, right?
It is deceptively simple.
It is.
So much going on beneath the surface.
Yeah.
Kind of like one of those optical illusions where you have to really focus to see the hidden image.
Right.
The more you look at Warhol's work, the more you think about it, the more you discover.
It's true. It's not passive viewing, that's for sure.
No.
You have to really engage with it.
Yeah.
Think about it, maybe even argue with it a little bit. So we talked about how Campbell's soup cans really reflects that consumer culture of the 1960s. But how do you think its meaning shifts in our current world?
Right.
With social media, hyper-consumerism, instant gratification.
Right.
Does it still hold up today?
It's a really great question.
Yeah.
And I think Warhol himself would have loved to ponder that.
I bet.
I mean, can you imagine him with a smartphone, scrolling through Instagram?
By irony.
The irony would be incredible.
It would be amazing.
So yeah, does the work become even more relevant in our current context? Does it take on new layers of meaning?
Yeah.
Or does it somehow lose its impact now that we're constantly bombarded with all these images and brands?
Right.
I mean, I really do think it becomes more relevant.
Yeah.
Because now more than ever, we're drowning in images and brands.
It's true.
We curate our online personas.
Yeah.
We consume and display products as part of our identity.
Right.
And we're constantly striving for that perfect Instagrammable life.
Oh.
It's almost like Warhol's prediction about everybody being famous for 15 minutes has come true on a massive scale.
Right. And it's not even just 15 minutes anymore.
It's not just 15 minutes anymore. It's
It's never ending.
it's this constant cycle.
Yeah, it's like that prediction has just evolved along with technology.
Yeah,
It's 15 minutes of fame just repeated endlessly.
exactly. And because of that, I think Campbell's soup cans feels even more potent.
Yeah.
As this commentary on the influence of images, the allure of brands, and the way our culture is becoming increasingly homogenized.
Right.
I mean, it's fascinating to think that something created over half a century ago can still feel so relevant, so sharp, so now.
It really is. It's like the work is constantly evolving, taking on new meanings as the world around it changes.
Yeah, for sure.
So where does that leave us? What's the final takeaway, the parting thought you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important thing is this.
Oh, okay.
Don't be afraid to question everything.
Okay.
Question what you see, question what you think you know.
Yeah. Question what you're told is art.
Right.
Warhol, he certainly didn't play by the rules.
He didn't.
And look what he achieved.
Exactly. He challenged conventions, pushed boundaries, created art that made people think,
Yeah.
which is something we can all strive to do, whether we consider ourselves artists or not.
Exactly. It's about approaching the world with curiosity.
Yeah.
finding inspiration in these unexpected places,
Okay.
and maybe even creating something, you know, beautiful and thought-provoking
Mm-hmm.
out of the seemingly mundane.
It's about looking at a can of soup and seeing, not just a can of soup, but a reflection of ourselves,
Yeah,
our culture, the world we live in.
that's it.
So we encourage you to keep exploring,
Yes,
keep questioning,
absolutely.
keep those minds open.
Open minds.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Andy Warhol's Campbell's soup cans,
And remember,
and remember,
in the words of the great Andy Warhol himself, art is what you can get away with.
oh, I love that.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And we'll see you next time on Study Hall.